Hey everybody, this is part 2 now of my 5 core commitments videos, and I'm looking at how I pursue my 5 core commitments now using my bullet journal. So I'm going to walk you through that practice. So in part 1, I outlined my 5 core commitments on a continuum from the most engaged to the most reflective. And those 5 commitments are intimacy, immersion, intentionality, followed by improvement, and intellection. In this video, I'm going to show you how I use my bullet journal to make plans, to take action, and then to stay accountable for these commitments. Essentially, my bullet journal is the tool that I use to do intentionality and to plan for improvement. And the commitments that I'm being intentional about and looking to improve upon are mostly intimacy, immersion, and intellection. So intentionality and improvement are from the bullet journal into my life through intimacy, immersion, and intellection. It was a really great feeling to get to page 249 of my first ever journal and realize that over the prior 9 months, I had been pretty much the most intentional, the most improved version of myself that I've ever been. And as I began a new year and a new journal, my hope was to further define what intentionality and improvement looked like across all the different areas of my life, and from day to day, hour to hour, even minute to minute, what that looked like. Annie Dillard has this great quote where she says, "How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives." And I want to spend my life well, and I want to spend each day an hour better and better as I go. So first, we're going to look at intentionality in practice. Here's how I try to do it anyway. Someone once said that until you have established what you need to do right now, what you need to do right now is establish what you need to do right now. Until you have set a priority, your priority is to set the priority. So Greg McKeown, who I just read on Essentialism, he points out that from the years 1400 to 1900, there was no such thing as the plural form of priority. It was not priorities, it was priority. It wasn't until the industrial age that we started to pluralize it and call it priorities, which of course, when you think about it, doesn't actually make any sense at all. Priorities. So if Stephen Covey says, hey, don't prioritize your schedule, schedule your priorities, I'm trying to take that one step further and say, only live each moment no further than the priority at hand. And then after that, don't worry, there'll be another priority. In other words, don't live with a long or even a short to-do list sitting in front of you, but live in the moment and focus on what you've got to attend to right now. How? Well, first, like everyone else, I've got a zillion things to do. Every time something comes into my realm of attention and seeks to grab it, I do the whole getting things done, David Allen, Zen-like thing of just capturing it. I put it in my Google Calendar. I put it in my future log if it is a future thing. I put it on this week's list of bullet items, and I deal with it later, but not in the moment. I've delegated the responsibility for remembering that thing to my bullet journal. Thank you, bullet journal. So then what happens is each week in my bullet journal, I've got a list that pretty much invariably occupies one full sheet of my bullet journal. I'm capturing things here, and I'm also migrating things from prior weeks back onto this list. If I decide that something isn't important enough, then I strike it through and get rid of it from my list. That's just textbook bullet journal stuff. But this, of course, doesn't get me anywhere near knowing what the one priority is that I'm supposed to be doing right now. So for this, I've started a new practice. What I've implemented in my life is called the Ivy Lee method. I stole this from James Clear. Ivy Lee used to be a PR guy for the Rockefellers back in the day. Lee says to write down the 6 things that are important for you to do that next day. Write them down the day before, ideally, or the morning of. And then with those 6 and only 6 items, he says to rank 1 through 6, their order of true importance. Not their order of urgency, but their order of actual importance. Yeah, there might be urgent things on the list, but in true importance, what is the ranking 1 through 6? And then Ivy Lee says you spend your day at the beginning with number 1, and you do that until it's done. And then you move on to number 2 and 3. And then at the end of each day, whatever you might have left just goes on the next day's list. Piece of cake. So Ivy Lee was kind of bullet journaling before bullet journaling was cool. So for me, everything from lesson planning to playing basketball with my kid to working on my PhD might be a priority for that day. So I work through the people, the projects, and the domains of study that I'm currently committed to, and I pick the 6 most important things to try to do that day, and then I schedule them. I like to put the rank of importance right there in the schedule too, and then circle it. Now, when I'm in the block of time that's allotted to that one thing, it's got to have my full attention. I plan the work and then I work the plan. Now, if a task has several parts to it, then I make a sub-bullet list to break down the task into discrete actions so that I can move through this task with focus and intentionality. So for the next 3 years or so, PhD is always going to be on my list of important things to attend to. So I break these tasks down, and instead of my clock striking 4 and I look at my schedule and it says PhD, and then I go, well, what do I do? Now I can look at my schedule and hopefully it says read Westfall. So I think, okay, cool, I can do that. And my transition doesn't take any time at all. Now, often my plan gets blown to smithereens in a given day, right? Annie Dillard says that, a schedule is a net that we use to catch days. Well, sometimes somebody comes along with a bigger net and catches my net and me in it. And guess what? I'm off doing something else. And that happens. When it comes to my schedule, that just means that I tweak things, that I look and see where the next block of time is. And I write my new schedule right alongside the old one. No big deal. I'm flexible. And finally, I try to do this planning either first thing in the morning or last thing at the end of each day. In the future, I'm going to try, like I said, to put this planning time, this intentionality time, right into my schedule so that I'm planning that commitment as well. After all, it's one of my 5 core commitments. I better put it in my schedule. The time that I spend planning my day intentionally actually makes the day feel productive and meaningful, even if I only get 2 out of my 4 work tasks done, or 1 out of my 2 relational tasks done. Intentionality is about narrowing down a long list of bulleted items of things that might possibly be okay to do right now. And it's about saying what's essential for this day in order for this day to be meaningful. How am I going to get from this long list to a day that's spent with each hour and each minute being lived fully and for things that are of utmost importance? So there's intentionality and how I practice it in various ways. So in part 1, I talked about the commitment to improvement, and I did it pretty generally. But now I want to talk practically about what's involved in improvement and how I look at it in my bullet journal. Improvement means that I'm looking back at every week and month, honestly. It means looking at myself as a husband, as a father, as a teacher, as a pastor, as a student, and as a human person that has a body and a spirit as well. Those are my 7 vocations. It means looking at those things and essentially asking 2 questions of those areas of my life. What's the story here? And what am I going to do to perhaps write a better story? What's the story? How do I write a better one? One way to refresh my memory over the course of a week is to look over my day planner and see how I spent my days. And I could also do the same thing with my month. I can look at the monthly things that I've done and get a basic narrative of how I spent my month. What were the highlights of it? And what story does that month and week tell? And then I'd try to do a little outline of the plot of my story across my 5 commitments and across my callings. And then I'll see what I can think of that I might do to write the story a little bit better the following week or the following month, to bring that story, as far as it depends on me, a little bit closer towards a happy ending. Now, sometimes this will mean getting help from the outside, right? Sometimes I have to ask my wife, what would being a better husband actually look like this week? Maybe I need to ask my kids or my boss how I can better serve my work and my relationships. And then once I've got my resolutions, I try to write them down and I use them to inform my intentionality for the coming week and month. Now, here's the thing about improvement. This could seem almost like, works righteousness or something. Like I'm trying to prove myself by my incremental, growth or something. Sure, that's a temptation. I think that improvement can be specific and it can be rigorous. I think specific resolutions are important. We ought to define what it is that we want to do better the next week and month. I even think if you want to get artificial and create some tracker in your journal that goes after that one area of your life and seeks to hold you accountable to what you've resolved, fine, do it, whatever helps. Measure that stuff objectively, form the habit, right? Enjoy the chemical rewards in the brain when you cross something off of a habit tracker. These are all great things. But you've also got to look at your life and therefore at improvement as a story and not just a thing to check off. Annie Dillard, who I keep coming back to these days, is a storyteller, of course. She values schedules, but she's a storyteller. Why does she value schedules? Because a schedule helps her to weave a better story out of her life. And she thinks it will out of ours as well. So don't forget that your specific commitments and your improvements are not a way for you to justify your existence or to please the gods or anyone else that's trying to hold you hostage to be a better person. They're just hacks on the way toward a biography that we would hope our loved ones would write for us once we've gone. Or as David Brooks says in The Road to Character, these are just ways to go from resume virtues through to eulogy virtues, to make a better story out of our life and one that's worth telling when it's all done. So there you go. There's my 5 core commitments and how I'm using my bullet journal to go after those 5 things and pursue faithfulness across all the domains of my life. The last thing I want to say, of course, is that in some ways this is a bullet journal, and in a lot of other ways, though, it's just a plain old journal. The bullet journal system is a priority management and task inventorying system that allows you to capture and plan and review the tasks that are most important to you. An extension of the bullet journal system are all these reviews and resolutions. Even the things like my daily annotations on what happened are offshoots of the bullet journal system. And I love this stuff, right? But a lot of my journal isn't a bullet journal. It's just a plain old journal. It's just a notebook. It's just paper that I put the pen to. And that's fine. And that should be fine for you too. I've got everything from my favorite C.S. Lewis quotes to notes from professional development sessions to brainstorming pages to lesson planning to sermon preparation notes to notes on other books that I'm reading. Just whatever. Just put it in your journal. What I love is that I've got my life right here in so many ways, right? My calendar, my ideas, my reflections, my to-do lists, my poems, and the pages that I've used trying to define who I am and what it is that I'm doing with my life. So when I archived my last journal, it was really awesome to be able to look back and to trace 9 months of living intentionally and 9 months of different other jottings that sort of told the story of my life. So I lived the last 9 months not just pinging back and forth from one thing to the next without any plan and without any trace left over. But now I have a journal that I can use to keep me living intentionally, to keep me living reflectively, and with fuller engagement. And it's also a record of what my life was about for the better part of a year. And I think that's the really cool thing about keeping a journal. So I hope this video has been helpful to many of you, maybe even inspiring to a few of you. You're welcome to steal, as I've said, any of my core commitments and integrate them into your practices, or you can come up with your own. But either way, I really do think that you ought to give a bullet journal method a chance. Do it for 6 months. Do it for a month and see if you like it. So there you go, a little pep talk and inspiration for you to start a bullet journal if you haven't before. Thanks for watching. It's been a pleasure. We'll catch you next time.